Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome today to our lovely guest, Ilke Cochrane. Hi Ilke.
Hi Sue.
It's lovely to speak to you today. Now, Ilke you're Dutch, aren't you? It's a Dutch name, is that?
I am, yes.
Yeah, but you speak English absolutely beautifully. So, better than me, I think. You don't have a Yorkshire accent to contend with. Here's a bit about Ilke. My name is Ilke Cochrane, Dutch but living in the UK, and I design embroidery under the name of Mabel Figworthy's Fancies. You know that's going to be a question, don't you? These I sell as chart packs, but I also do a range of kits and a few other bits and bobs like scissors and coasters and stuff like that. I teach workshops annually at the Knitting and Stitching Show in London, the one at Alexandra Palace, but also I do workshops for the Embroiderers Guild groups or privately at home, and I give occasional talks. My designs are mainly Hardanger, although in the past couple of years I've been branching out into freestyle, shisha and goldwork embroidery, and at the moment I am studying for the Royal School of Needlework's certificate in technical hand embroidery, although what with the coronavirus, that is temporarily on hold. So there we are in a nutshell is Ilke. So we'll go through and pick up lots of bits and pieces about her. She's got a very interesting story to share with us all. So, links. I'm doing well. Remembered her links. So the best place to get hold of Ilke is on her website, which is mabelfigworthy.co.uk. And she also has a blog, Fights of Fancy. So that's at mabelfigworthy.co.uk/FOF. And of course, these links and her social media links, they'll all be on Ilke's episode on stitcherystories.com as well for you to all go and check out. And she's on Facebook as Mabel's Fancies. So there we are. That's about it, isn't it, Ilke, with counter links and stuff?
That would be about it, yes.
Yeah, brilliant. So before we get to dug down into your stitchery story today, Ilke, would you like to share with us what you're working on and what's got you excited, bearing in mind that we're all in lockdown at the moment?
Yes, I know, and lots of people tell me they've got so much more time to stitch now, and of course I haven't because we're still working, so it's not that much different. But at the moment I'm working mostly on the RSN certificate piece that I'm doing, which is Jacobean crewel work. I've nearly finished. There is only one cat to do. And I'm also organising a stitch along at the moment. It started on the 1st of January. It'll run through to May. Yeah. So that's still going. And I'm stitching the final bits of the stitched models for that and keeping up with writing the blogs and so on. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's all good stuff anyway. Yeah, there's quite a few people have been saying, oh yeah, I've got loads of time now, let's all finish things off on Friday. We'll finish off Friday and we've got all this time. And I'm thinking, well, I don't have any time at all as usual because I'm still busily, I work from home anyway and my work's all virtual. So, I'm still, and I've seen a lot of people kind of panicking and flapping and trying to get online as fast as they can. So, I've had a lot of people reaching out and asking me things. So for me, and of course I've got a 15-year-old mooching around the house now as well. God bless him now, because of course he's had to finish school. But I suppose some people have got loads of spare time now and others don't.
They do, yes. Yeah. And as I say, the stitch along I'm doing, it's a sort of tree of life thing. And I've had a few people who joined halfway through, which is fine because you just get all the previous episodes in one go. And somebody joined, I think, middle of last week, and she's just sent me pictures of part 5.
So she's enjoying herself then?
Well, absolutely, and I'd obviously got the time to do it in, so I was quite impressed.
Obvious. So do you want to just explain, while you've mentioned your stitch along, how how does that work, and what's the mechanism? Because again, if anybody, if you're still accepting people to come and join, then this is a good time, isn't it, to explain to us what that is and how it works.
Okay, well, I started my first stitch along in 2013, and that was Hardanger, which was a year-long one, and every month people got a small Hardanger design. I did another one in 2016. And then because I'd branched out myself a bit in all sorts of other types of embroidery, I thought it would be fun to do a freestyle one. So this year I've done a freestyle tree of life, which you could do as a crewel piece in wool, but you can... I'm doing 2 versions myself, one in wool, which is called the plain version, and one in silk with bits of gold work, which is called the bling version. And it's 10 parts, 2 a month. So it runs from 1st of January through to May.
Right.
And then you'll have your 10 parts and your complete tree. And everybody chooses their own colours and their own threads. And every part has lots of different stitches to choose from. So no 2 trees are the same, which is great fun because they vary by colour, but also by the stitches that people have chosen, and they all have different combinations. So it's really great to see all the various trees that have been made by people.
Yeah, and that's the thing about doing something like that in a group, isn't it? That everything, it's not all the same. Everything, or even sometimes, I know with our Embroiderers Guild, we a few years ago now found a pattern in it was a crewel pattern, actually. It was kind of a modern crewel workbook. And we said, we'll do this. And just even that, with the different colourways, the one in the book was monochrome, but the different colourways everybody chose, they really almost look totally different anyway. Well, I think 4 of us finished them, like I have to say, but it's like, I did. I was really proud. Mine was shades of green, and I love it. I love it. Had loads of beads and things on as well. It was very blingy, but it is fascinating, though, isn't it? How even with the same design, people can interpret things differently, and the combination of different threads, different colours, and different stitches. Yes, I should imagine they look absolutely lovely all together.
Yes, and I really try to encourage people to play around with it, and if there's 3 possible stitches for leaf number 3, and actually they prefer one of the 3 possible stitches for leaf number 2, then by all means pick those and do that.
Right. So it's a starting point to inspire, isn't it? Then, and
it is.
the motivation of getting a new piece to do. So there's some like the magic of some deadlines moving along as well.
Yes, although some people find that difficult. A friend of mine who did the 2 Hardanger ones, he said what he doesn't like about Sal's is that he always falls behind, and then he feels this pressure. And I said, look, anything of mine, nothing has a deadline. I had somebody send me a picture of her finished piece of the 2013 Sal a couple of months ago. So she'd taken her time, but it was finished and it was beautiful. So why not?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's ourselves that put the pressure on. As you say, if it's like a lot of these kind of challenges, I'm on Facebook a lot, and you get a lot of these challenges for like business kind of stuff. And it's the same thing. If you maybe only find out about it on day 3 or something, and you think, well, I'll join anyway. And then you immediately feel like, oh God, then you have a bad day doing something else, and you, oh no. And so by day 6, you're like, oh no, you feel as if you've totally lost it. And then that's when people give up, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a story in the head, isn't it? Of like, oh, there's no point in continuing now, which is always a shame because there's every point in continuing. So lovely. No, that sounds really great. So can people sign up on your website or something for that, Ilke?
Yes, if they look at the homepage, there's a sort of badge there that will take them to the information page, and there they can sign up.
Right. Brilliant. So anybody, if you fancy getting inspired by freestyle surface embroidery and Ilke's stitch along, then get yourself off and give it a try. And does everybody share pictures with themselves? Do you have like a group on the go as well?
There's a Facebook group for the SAL, so you can only join that group once you've signed up for the SAL. And I think not everybody, because not everybody gets actively involved. We've got about 50 or 60 people on there, but there's fewer of them that actively share things.
Yeah, it's still
I think
nice.
That's always the case. Yeah.
Well, it is. That's right. Some people just like to kind of lurk and do their own thing and don't want to share things. So,
That's
but
right.
others do. So again, that's like real life, isn't it? There's always some chatty ones, and there's always some ones who just sit quietly and get on with what they're doing. Yeah.
And there are a few people who are not on Facebook and who send me pictures by email. So on the website, there's also a dedicated Stitch Along gallery where I put all the pictures in.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, yes, everybody assumes that everybody's on Facebook and no, everybody's not on Facebook. No. That's a good thing. So, people mustn't think that, they can't do it because they're not on Facebook. So I'm pleased you mentioned that. Thank you. Right. So that's, so you've got plenty to keep you busy anyway and excited about what's going on with your Stitch Along. So how did you, obviously you said you did your first Stitch Along in 2013 and so you've obviously been busy doing this for a while. So how did you first get interested in embroidery and textile art? I think you mentioned starting off with Hardanger. And so how did that all come along, Ilke?
I had an absolute dislike of anything textile related when I was a child. I grew up in the 70s, and so at school, because I was a girl, I had to do knitting and crochet, where the boys got to do the really interesting stuff like woodwork and metalwork.
We could do all of those. We all did everything, so that's always a lot better, I think.
No, I'm afraid I was in a traditional school, so that was simply not happening. So I really disliked it, and when I left school, I decided never to touch a needle again. And then a neighbour of ours, elderly neighbour, who couldn't see very well anymore, she gave me her sewing box with all her cross-stitch materials in it. And so, not hampered by any knowledge whatsoever, I decided that I would have a go. And at that point, we had a lovely embroidery shop within walking distance from where I lived, run by two sisters who were really, really helpful. And I found a kit there that I really liked of a satin stitch initial with a cat in cross stitch curled around it, which was on an even weave fabric and probably wouldn't have been chosen normally by a beginner, but as I say, I hadn't got a clue. I just liked the cat. So I got that and tried and started it and really liked it. So got into cross stitch. Very quickly realized that the things I wanted to stitch weren't always out there. So I started charting my own stuff, also for birthday cards and things like that to make them a bit more personal. And I found online the Cross Stitch Forum, which is a lovely, supportive and encouraging group of people. And some of them, although everybody did cross stitch, some of them also did other things. And one of the ladies had her forum name is Serinda, which is, I think, Lord of the Rings. She's an embroideress. And she did some Hardanger, which I thought looked really interesting. So I thought, I'll try that. And I tend to go to the library, get as many books out as I possibly can, read them all, try it out, see what I can do. Yeah. So I did that for Hardanger and found out that it worked rather well, really. And then I started to design my own, and I popped a few onto the Cross Stitch Forum, and several other people said, we really liked that. Yeah. So because I'd been writing websites for other things like our church and our other business and so on, I thought, I might as well write one for myself. Yeah. So I started Mabel's Fancies, and I design whatever I like, pop it on there, and if other people like it as well, that's nice. And if they buy it, that's even nicer. And if they don't like it, well, okay. At least I like it. So that's the sort of philosophy behind it, really.
Right, so I'm glad you mentioned Mabel's Fancies. So how does somebody called Ilke Cochrane come up with a website called mabelfigworthy.co.uk? Where did that come from?
That comes from Flanders and Swan, and you need to dig back into British culture a bit for that. They were a duo in the 50s and 60s who did comic songs, and
it was like the old music hall thing, wasn't it, really?
A little bit like that. Their most famous one was the hippopotamus. Mud, glorious mud. That most people know that one. And Mabel Figworthy comes into one of the songs and one of the monologues. And I met my husband through a forum of people who liked Flanders and Swan, which was rather fun. And so I asked the chap who looks after their estates, their sort of copyright stuff. Yeah. I said, would you mind if I use the name? And he said, go ahead, have fun. So there she is.
Right, Joe, that's got to be one of the most interestingly named, interesting stories as to why something has been named as it was. Brilliant. So then the extension from Mabel Figworthy. So Mabel's Fancies. What's that all about?
I didn't just want to call it Mabel Figworthy, so it needed something else, and I like my alliteration, so it was either going to be Fancies or there was something else with an F, and I can't really even remember what that was, but we stuck with Fancies. So, and that worked because it gave it a nice shorter name as well. So Mabel's Fancies was easier for people who couldn't quite remember the Figworthy. And so that's how she happened. And I started the business in 2011 on Easter Monday.
Right. So what's that? Nearly 9 years old then?
Yes.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. So is it Mabel's Fancies because you make what you fancy doing? Is that where it's all fits together?
I think it is. Whatever takes my fancy is what I design. So, yeah. And also thinking of those little cakes, I think, which are called Fancies. Fondant Fancies.
Yes.
It's, something sweet and comforting.
And colourful.
And colourful.
They're always colourful, aren't they, those little cakes? So you started up in 2011. So what made you turn this into a business then?
Well, as I say, I shared designs with the forum that I was a member of, and people said, "Oh, we really like that." And then I thought, well, I might as well put them out there. It's because I do all the work on the website myself. It doesn't really matter whether it is enormously successful or not. So whatever I design goes out there, and some of it never finds a buyer at all. It's obviously just me who likes it, and some of them are quite popular, and it's a bit unpredictable. But
and I think, do you know what though, either the unpredictability of it or just the freeing nature of, well, I'm going to do this and it's my business and I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to make things I like, because I think quite often, and I've had guests talk about this before, maybe off air, but I think some have even talked about it on air as well, that you get trapped into this thing of you make something because it sells and then you think, well, I better make some more of those, and then you realise after a while, oh, good grief, I hate making this thing. I don't want to do it anymore. And then you feel trapped because then everyone knows you for making this thing that actually you don't want to do anymore because you don't like it.
I know. And I have some constraints in my work, I suppose. There are things that I change slightly because I know that I can ask myself to do it in a certain way, which is extremely complicated and silly. But I can't put it in a chart pack because it would be almost impossible to explain.
Yes.
So then I will change the design a bit, even though I will probably make my own version as well with the other stitch in which I happen to like.
Right.
But on the whole, I will pretty much do what I like. And I'm lucky in that it is not my main income.
Right.
So that does free you up terribly. If it's what pays the mortgage and the weekly groceries, then I suppose you have to consider what will sell.
Yes, it's that balancing act, isn't it? That some people have got the freedom to be able to do what they want. Others have come across something that sells well, but then ultimately don't like doing it anymore. And then they've got the agonising choice of, well, yes, it pays the bills, but really what I want to do is something else. So yeah, that's a different place to be altogether. So do you know what? I think no matter how many people I talk to, whether it's people who are entirely running their business, have a part-time job to supplement, and just doing it as a pure hobby, I think wherever we are is wherever we are, and probably where we are supposed to be and where we feel comfortable at as well. So
yes,
I think fighting ourselves isn't always a good thing or a good way to be. So
no, my husband keeps trying to tell me that I need to go for world domination, but I've told him that I don't actually want world domination.
Yes.
So I'm quite happy where I am.
World domination, hard work, I think.
It is. I think he just wants to retire off my income, but
that's it. You see, then he's getting down to the nub of the matter. Yeah. So, what would you say then, Ilke, have been your major inspirations over the years?
Well, initially, I suppose the neighbour who gave me a sewing box, because without her, I probably wouldn't have started.
Yes.
And Serinda on the Cross Stitch Forum for introducing me to Hardanger.
Yeah.
Quite a number of the Royal School of Needlework tutors that I've done classes with have been very inspirational. I think one of the most inspiring people, and if she ever hears this, she's going to kill me, is my friend Trina, who picked up a needle for the first time last summer and who has been producing some really stunning bits of embroidery.
Wow.
Yeah, she's, for various reasons, she's often housebound, and this has been something that she's picked up. She's just really, really good at it. She just doesn't really know it herself. But I find that inspirational to see how quickly you can pick up something new and create something that is entirely your own.
Yeah.
It's a lovely hobby.
Yeah, it is. And I've also been amazed at some of the guests I've had who have kind of said the same thing. Oh no, I hated anything at school. I didn't do any sewing, or this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And then for some reason they like picked up a pencil and they realised they could draw, or they could paint, or all of a sudden they can do embroidery, and they don't even know why they never tried it before, and they don't really even know why they did try it. But wow, there's a hidden talent there just waiting. And just think how sad the world would be if some of these people didn't discover that they had that talent.
Exactly.
Well, hats off to your friend Trina then. Well done.
Yes.
That's really great. And I think back to myself, actually. I had the same thing. There was an old lady, a spinster, who lived next door to us when I was about, might be 6 or 7, something like that. And same thing, obviously her eyesight. I remember being one of those really frail little old ladies. And at some point I got this box of embroidery threads and some tapestries, and I've got this pile of embroidery transfers from like the 1930s. I love these. I used to sit and look at them and draw them, and then and you iron them on. And so, I used to love doing those when I was little. So she was an inspiring thing. Exactly the same thing. That's how I got going with it. So yeah, that's fantastic. So you've mentioned there about techniques. So you got into the Hardanger through the lady at the Cross Stitch Forum. So do you want to just tell us a bit more? Because I don't think we've had any guests talk about Hardanger at all. So since that's kind of ish where you started, do you want to just tell us a bit more about Hardanger, if there's what there is to know about that?
Yes, well, it's a Norwegian counted technique.
Norwegian, that's it. Norwegian. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. There's a place called the Hardanger Fjord, I think. It's a region, and presumably it was named after that. It's actually quite similar to other techniques around the continent. There's La Gatera in Spain, and a few other techniques dotted around Italy and so on, which are very, very similar. And what they have in common is that there is satin stitching in a slightly heavier thread, and then cut work, which is embellished with a finer thread. And the satin stitches hold your fabric together when you cut little bits out of it.
Right.
And I do beginners workshops for Hardanger.
Yeah. And
people are always absolutely terrified of the cutting bit, because this is the big thing with Hardanger. You do all your surface stitching before you start the cutting. So especially if you're doing quite a big project, you've done an awful lot of stitching already, and then you're taking scissors to your work. And in fact, once you've got the technique, it really isn't that scary.
Right.
But the moment when, because obviously for the workshops we do tiny little bits of stitching, but the moment when people make those cuts and then pull out the threads and then suddenly see this lacy thing that they've made, and they go, "Ooh, I've made that." I said, "Yes, you did," and it's lovely to see. But it's a lovely airy sort of embroidery. It's also, compared to cross stitch, it is relatively quick. So if I wanted to make a card with a sort of, say, 8 centimetre square insert or piece of work, and I had to cross stitch that, especially if you did some finer work, it would take you quite a long time. Whereas with Hardanger, you could probably knock something off in an evening.
Oh.
Especially once you get a bit more into it, so this appealed to me because I'm a bit of a small project instant gratification girl where embroidery is concerned. Yes, you can get quite an impressive effect with fairly few means, which is nice.
Well, I'm very surprised to hear that, because it looks as if it would take longer somehow. Maybe it's because of that, so that kind of open effect and pulling threads out and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm quite surprised at that, because I would have, if you looked at it, you just thought, that's bound to take longer. But no, cross stitch takes longer than that. Oh well, there you are, everybody.
Yeah.
If you want something speedy, get on and get some Hardanger done. I've never tried that. No. The only cut work sort of stuff I did, I remember. Oh, this was when I used to be in the York Embroiderers Guild, so I can say at the turn of the century, 2001 or something. Anyway, we had, I'll tell you who it was. Tracy Franklin, who was one of my early guests. She used to come to York and do workshops when she was just kind of getting going. And she did a white workshop, and we did this pattern, and we had a few Sundays, I think it was, every now and again we worked on this. And then I left the guild because I moved away and finished up living in Ireland, had my son and stuff. But so this white work, I didn't finish it when we was doing it, but I remember going back to it because it seemed to take me forever. And I think it was actually while I was pregnant. I thought, right, and I packed work in. I thought, I'm determined. I'm now going to, get these things finished. And so I remember it was all where you had to buttonhole all around a shape and then cut out, cut the circle out or whatever it was. And it was like, oh, I was going to drop to bits, but no, it was all absolutely fine. So that's the only. I was so chuffed when I finally finished this piece of white work, and I think I have to say it's the only piece of white work I've ever done. I can't see me doing another one. It tried my patience greatly, let's put it that way.
It's partly about finding out what suits you and what you like, and that's one of the things I like about trying all sorts of different techniques.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I liked about when I went to the knitting and stitching show as just as a sort of an embroiderer and came to see what they had before I started teaching there. I did some of the workshops there that the Royal School of Needlework did. They were 1 hour needle workshops for a technique, and they just gave you the basics and a tiny little project. And I found them so useful because I found that I really, really loved gold work, and I really, really did not like stump work. And I could find that out by doing an affordable workshop without having the outlay of getting all the stuff that you need for it. And so then I could concentrate on the things I actually enjoyed.
Right. And then you're passing those on with your workshops and your stitch alongs and that kind of thing as well. Brilliant. Yes, and hopefully that everything's all back on again at the end of the year.
Well, do you know, I've just had the email with the workshop schedule, so which we have to proofread and say, are we okay with the times and so on. So I've been assigned 4 workshops this year, I think. So we live in hope. Brilliant.
Right. Okay. So we'll everyone look out for you for those as well in London. Fantastic.
That's right.
Yeah. Brilliant. Now, so what would you say then, Ilke, has been the high point of your textile art and embroidery journey so far?
Partly, I think, starting Mabel's Fancies. And at first, I must say, especially when I started giving talks to embroiderers guilds and so on, I had terrible imposter syndrome. Because here were these embroiderers guilds, people looking at me for words of wisdom in my talk, and I thought, oh my goodness, they actually think I know what I'm talking about. And but I think possibly the moment when I realised that I was a designer, proper designer, was when I'd had something published in Stitch magazine,
right?
And I went to visit my mother-in-law. And she was going to go to her embroidery group that afternoon. She said, do you want to come? Because one of the people there is actually doing your design from Stitch magazine. And I think she would like to ask you a question. I said, yeah, that's fine.
Oh, lovely.
So I came along and I had my stitching bag with me and sat down, and she said, oh, I can't quite work this one out. So I said, well, do you know what? I've got a bit of Hardanger with me. So I whipped it out and I sat there and showed her. And before I knew it, I had this entire group around me, including the tutor. all looking at this published person who was dispensing her words of wisdom there. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is just me. Don't they know? But yeah, that was when I started to take myself slightly more seriously, I think.
It often takes something like that as well, where I don't think we appreciate what other people see in us. But yeah, imposter syndrome's a real big thing. And I think if you've got a magazine published or something, everyone goes, oh wow, that's absolutely fantastic, which it is. It really is, because you've got off your backside and gone and done something about something as well. Do you know what I mean? So you're saying that it's not within Stitchery, but I'm in several kind of local networking groups and stuff, and it must be about 4 years ago now, actually. I was it was just an informal thing, but I was going to talk about, I don't know, video marketing or something like that. And we used to meet in a pub. So it was something like, it was my turn to do kind of an informal session to answer questions and kind of a bit chat about video marketing or whatever it was I was doing. I think it was video marketing. And then we had the most terrific storm. And the person, because Ryan was younger then, so the person who was coming to kind of babysit him couldn't get here, or there was something. So in the end, I couldn't go to this networking thing. So then somebody sent me a message to saying, there was one of the ladies there who turned up specifically to see you because she'd seen some of your videos on YouTube and was really excited to meet you in person. And she was gutted. She was gutted that you couldn't go. Oh, okay. Well, I'm really sorry I couldn't make it, so I connected with her, and I've met her lots of times since, but that really made me laugh. She's seen you on YouTube and she really wants to meet you.
Oh, what's it like to be a celebrity?
Oh, I know, along with the other billions of people on YouTube. So, yeah.
Quite.
Right. Oh, so I like that one. Now then, so you've been working on these for quite a while then, Ilke. So do you have any stories to cheer us up in these grim times about if something didn't go quite as planned, possibly even a bit of a disaster, and importantly, what did you learn from that experience? And again, everybody, we do this for a bit of a laugh, not to be not to be awful.
No. I'm sitting at the dining room table at the moment, and I'm looking at some of the results of said failure. I'd watched a program with Ruth Goodman, one of those. She does the Edwardian Farm and things as well. And
right, yes.
She was in one of those historical recreation programs, and she and her daughter were doing embroidery the medieval way, slate frame, all that, and they were making their own gold thread. And they'd found certain ways of doing it that didn't work, and then certain ways of doing it that did work. And they used a gold foil. Now, besides embroidery, I've also done quite a bit of calligraphy and doing illumination with gold leaf and so on.
Right.
So I thought, I've got some gold leaf somewhere.
Oh, no.
Now, they'd said gold foil, which is thicker than gold leaf, because gold leaf tends to sort of fall to powder when you breathe on it.
Yeah.
But I thought, why not? I've been doing gold work. If I can make my own gold threads, wouldn't that be marvellous? So I got some buttonhole thread because I thought that would be nice and firm.
Yeah.
And I cut the gold leaf into strips, and I had gold leaf that sat on a tissue background, so it didn't go everywhere immediately. And then tried to roll it up and on the dining room table. And in the end, I had some extremely messy looking thread with sort of lumps of gold around it, gold fingertips, and some gold that is right up to this moment on the dining table because I can't get it off.
A nice gold embellished table.
So yes, that obviously didn't work. I still have to buy my gold work threads. What I learned from it is that there are limits to what you can do yourself. On the other hand, also, it might have worked, so have a go.
Give it a try. That is just the best. I know. I honestly haven't ever heard of anybody trying to make their own gold thread. Yeah, I can only imagine actually what it looked like. Yeah,
I looked very blingy.
I love that. That is just a brilliant story. Thank you for sharing that with us. But yeah, importantly, give things a go. And I know that's something that you're quite keen about as well, isn't it? To encourage even beginners about having a go. So did you encourage your friend Trina then? Is that how she suddenly got going?
Yes, she and another friend over the summer holidays. She did some painted pebbles because she's quite a creative person. And she painted pebbles in the shape of owls. And they were really sweet. One of them was painted in sort of shades of turquoise and brown and orange. Yeah. And I had just started my Royal School of Needlework module of crewel work, where you are limited to a palette of 3 colours. You can have various shades in those colours, but there's only 3 colours. And my colours happen to be brown and turquoise and orange. So I thought, I wonder if I could do that owl in stitching. And I could, and I did. And then I showed it to her, and she said, "Oh, I would like to do that." So we sort of got together with a few friends and had a stitching session to do that owl. And she did. That was her very first piece of stitching, and she's taken it from there.
Oh, how lovely! Yeah. So that's really great then. So encouraging people to have a go, and I think at this point in time as well, there may be people who are sitting and thinking, God, I really fancy, maybe hasn't had time for a hobby for a long time, and now do, you know. So I think to encourage people to try a new thing, could be quite a positive outcome out of all of this as well. The
only thing I'd like to say, I think, to anybody who hasn't done any embroidery and who says, "Oh, I'd like to try," is, will you please remember that if you started ballet at this point, you would not be dancing the Dying Swan within 2 weeks.
Good point.
Because people come to the workshops, and quite a few of them are really, really pleased with what they achieve. But some of them come to a workshop, they've never done any embroidery before. They go away with something that really looks very presentable, and they go, "Oh, it doesn't look like yours." I said, "Well, I've had a few more years, So look at what you couldn't do before and what you can do now, and just be jolly proud of what you've done in perhaps 2 hours."
That is a really, really important point. Because we do, and I saw a post similar to that today. It was somebody with a little boy on a pony, and then fast forward showed is now a guy kind of standing on 2 horses and steering 2, kind of like steering four horses hurtling round a ring kind of thing. And it was like,
oh my goodness,
this little boy, when he was sat there on his little Shetland pony, didn't think he would be this man on these 4 horses hurtling round. But it's a progression, isn't it? So
it is.
Good point, because we're all so hard on ourselves at times as well. So But I'm really pleased you raised that, Ilke, because that is very, very important as well. I know it's really difficult at the moment for any of us to kind of even consider making any plans, but you have mentioned about, hopefully, the Knitting and Stitching shows. So I was just wondering if you had any kind of future plans and projects and things that you'd like to share with us, so that people can come along and follow you and join in or whatever, just so that people know.
Yeah. Well, when I finished this first module of the crewel work, which I'm hoping to finish by the end of this month, and I finished with the SAL, then I want to get back to a few projects that I've been working on for quite some time. They've been, I've picked them up and then I put them down again and so on, but I really want to get back to them. And I think my favourite of the 8 or 9 that are at the moment lurking in my craft room is one called Hengist, the Medieval Unicorn. Hengist is an Old English word. I used to study English, and it means horse. And one of the tutors at the RSN did a retreat a few years back based on Opus Anglicanum, which is the medieval English embroidery.
Yes.
3 days at Coombe Abbey, which was lovely surroundings, but very dark. And from that, I sort of got interested and looked at other Opus Anglicanum works, and one of them is called the Steeple Aston Cope, and it has got the most quirky horses on it imaginable. It's got 2 horses, both with an angel on their back playing an instrument, and they're slightly cross-eyed and fairly manic looking and polka dotted. And so I took one of them and changed him around a bit and changed his polka dots and made him a unicorn. and called him Hengist. And he's pretty much done except for his bridle and his mane.
Right.
And then I can turn him into a chart pack and put him on the website. So, but I first have to finish stitching him. And,
yeah. Oh, he sounds fascinating. I like the sound of Hengist already.
He's lovely. And if you read the blog, there's a few bits about him. He's got these very dark outlined eyes. And at first I did them outlined in black. And he looked like Claudia Winkleman. So I had to unpick that and do it in a slightly more muted grey. It still looks fairly manic, but that's his character. So he's the one I really want to get back to.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about the blog as well, because I really enjoy reading artist blogs and you know, going through what you're doing and how it's developing and all those. So anybody who doesn't bother blogging, then I would also encourage you to kind of give it a try, because I think it adds a much more personal dimension to the work. And I think people are just nosy and like the kind of backstory of how these things and what's gone wrong and what's working and how, you know, where the ideas came from. So yeah, good. I had a quick look before and I really enjoyed reading some of your posts. So yeah, thank you for reminding us of that.
And from the blogger's point of view, actually it's really helpful writing about the processes and looking back on it later and saying, oh, I did try that before and it didn't work then. Do you know what? That means I don't have to try it now.
Rather than going, oh, I remember now, this doesn't work. I did it 3 years ago and I forgot.
Right.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I think on that very helpful note, Ilke, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you today. I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat. Everybody go and find Ilke, go and read her blog, go and find Mabel Figworthy.co.uk. That's just ace. I love that. And just go and find Facebook, isn't it? Really is the main thing as well for you. Yeah. So go and find her on Facebook as well, and share with your friends. So thank you so much, Ilke. This has been absolutely brilliant speaking with you, and we'll catch up with each other at some point.
It's been lovely. Thank you.
Cheers, Ilke. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and information around this podcast. Please visit stitcherystories.com. Of course, you can listen to Stitchery Stories on plenty of podcast apps at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify and plenty more besides. You can also ask your smart speaker to play Stitchery Stories podcast too. But wherever you listen, why not leave us a rating and a review to encourage other people to listen too? I very much appreciate you taking the time to do that for me. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. Keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery Stories.